Welcome back to the Adam Gold Show on a day where the ACC touches the Pacific Coast Highway. Unbelievable, but very believable at the same time. We all saw this coming. You don't publicly flirt with Cal and Stanford and SMU and not ultimately, go to dinner. I mean, it's just going to happen. Luke DeCock of the News and Observer, who joins us on Fridays. So the ACC killed the league by saving it, saved the league by killing it. Does it really matter?
Destroyed the league in order to save it, Adam, is the phrase you're looking for. I think it does. I really believe, and I've said this all along, that the grant of rights and the network, that the ACC had actually created an infrastructure, a foundation, that allowed it to wait some of this out, and it had until about 2030 where it really had to start making difficult decisions. And instead, a number of these presidents got panicked by Florida State's saber rattling and the breakup of the Pac-12. They acted precipitously, and they did something that assures that when Florida State and Clemson and UNC now do leave, and they will, this assures it, this makes it 100%, it's going to happen. There's no way to stop it now. That the other schools will be left behind in a second-tier league. Notre Dame's going to flee too. It's just the short-sightedness of this is just staggering to me. And they talk about hundreds of millions of dollars. It comes to less than $4 million per school per year. Every public school in the ACC spends in excess of $100 million on athletic. It's tip money. They threw nickels at Randy Woodson until he caved.
I would argue that this was going to be an inevitability anyway, that doing nothing was worse than doing something, even if this something is not all that much. I agree. This is not anywhere close to bridging the gap. I don't believe it was ever billed as bridging the gap. Florida State.
Oh, it was.
No, nobody in their right mind thinks that this was bridging the gap.
Here's the explanation that I was given.
Right.
And I'll tell you this right now. This is from inside the ACC.
Mm-hmm.
The presidents have asked us to close the revenue gap, and this does that. That's 100%.
No, it doesn't. Nobody's going to believe that. I'm just saying.
Would you listen to me, please? This is what I was told. I'm not telling you it's true.
No, I
I'm
get it.
telling you this is how it was pitched to the presidents, and they bought it.
All right, but we're being told also that this is a good idea, and we all know that it's not a good idea. So we can challenge that. And we know that they don't believe this is going to close the revenue gap. The revenue gap is going to be $50 million between the SEC and the ACC and the Big Ten and the
Adam,
ACC.
Yes, you and I agree on that. And there's no doubt about it. What I'm telling you is what the people who run the league talked themselves into. And it's ludicrous, and they made a terrible short-sighted decision when they didn't have to act, and now they're going to have to sort through the wreckage for the next 5 or 6 years, and then they're going to be stuck in a second-tier league of their own devising.
Right. Again, that's happened. That would have happened either way. I think sitting by and doing nothing was worse than doing something. Look, I want to hear Jim Phillips, and I know Jim Phillips can hold immediate availability. It's kind of offline for most people, but I know we're going to monitor it here. I know you're going to go and participate in it as well. I want to hear Jim Phillips from his own mouth say that this will close the revenue gap, because the revenue gap is going to be we're not even closing it by adding Notre Dame as a full-time member if they ever did that. We're not getting to the money that the Big Ten and the SEC, and smart people recognize that. So I don't believe for a second that Jim Phillips is going to say that out loud, that we are closing the revenue gap.
I will wager you $1 American that he says something like, the presidents asked us to address the revenue gap, and this does that. Now, you and I both know this addresses about 1/8 of the revenue gap,
or less.
And it's tip money. It's insignificant. But that, I'm telling you, this is what the spin is going to be. This is what they have talked themselves into in their little cloistered offices in Charlotte now, not Greensboro, and it's the lack of leadership here. I don't necessarily blame Jim Phillips. He's trying to do what his bosses are telling him to do. But when you're taking orders from the presidents of Notre Dame and Syracuse, who have the two loudest voices in the room, you end up with a conference run like Notre Dame and Syracuse. And I don't think anyone's holding them up as case studies.
Well, Notre Dame's vote really didn't matter. They would have needed, if Notre Dame didn't have a vote on this.
Nobody has pushed this harder than Notre Dame. which is a 20% member of a conference that it's pushing to do something it doesn't want to do. Don't get me started on Notre Dame. I don't know why the ACC is listening to Notre Dame at this point. As I wrote, you can't blame Notre Dame for trying to push the ACC to doing things that hurt the ACC. Just like you can't blame a raccoon for going through your trash, but it's your fault you didn't lock the cans.
I blame the raccoons all the time. Luke DeCock of the News and Observer is joining us here. I know I've had
raccoon hater Adam.
I've had it out for the raccoons. Here's the thing, it's not that I think that the ACC did a good thing here, but I do think that they added money, and we were looking for any money. We're putting games on in movie theaters for maybe there's $1 there, whatever. That's not going to hurt anybody. I wish it wasn't for all sports. I wish it was just a football deal, because I do fear that once again we are going to punish the athletes for the desire to find more money. But here's where I come on in terms of this issue. I think this ended a long time ago. I think the notion that we were headed anywhere but where we are headed right now, that ended 8 years ago. When the SEC why did the SEC add Missouri? It wasn't because Missouri played good football. Oh, they got St. Louis and Kansas City. I got two cities we'd love to be all over the state of Missouri, and especially in those two cities, right? They didn't need Missouri. They added Texas A&M, and then Texas A&M joined because they wanted to separate from Texas. And as soon as they could, they screwed Texas A&M. We are headed for a time that has no bearing to what we have now or what we had 10 years ago, and it's inevitable that we'll have two leagues. They'll all be in one entity, be in two conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten, and it'll just look just like the NFL, and there was nothing that anybody could have done to stop it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, although I would point out that the SEC added Missouri to get those two television markets at a time when television markets mattered. They don't in 2023.
I agree.
So that logic has changed. I mean, you're adding SMU and the Bay Area teams is not going to get you any additional network revenue. I mean, you can't even watch ESPN in those markets right now,
right?
Because of the
I've got a TV screen on in front of me that says we offer Disney a fair deal, yet they are demanding an excessive increase. Right. Thank you.
So, it just underlines how stupid it is to act rashly and irreversibly right now, given how in flux the situation is. And my argument is, some of this may be inevitable, true, but you had bought yourself the time to wait some of this out and ride it out. I think there's a
How does this change it, though?
Once you've added these schools, you're in a much worse bargaining position. They don't add anything. They make you worse competitively. It's a disaster for everything traditionally that you care about the ACC in terms of being good at football or being good at men's basketball. It doesn't do anything to help any of those issues. It's a short-term panic move to add some limited revenue from ESPN and placate presidents who saw the Big 12 Act and wanted the ACC to do something. The smart move here was to do nothing at all. Not now, but you bought yourself time. Use it.
Again, I don't think this makes the ACC any worse than it was. I think it does make them money. Small amounts of money. It makes them money. And ultimately, it might not matter anyway. We talked to Ira Schafel from warchant.com. He says Florida State's going to lead the league in 2 years anyway. The league is dying. I don't know. It might die. The Pac-12 died. Maybe with the ACC should just call themselves the Pac-18 now. I don't know. It doesn't really matter anyway, since it's all about college football as a TV product. But I think standing pat was worse than trying something, even though this is obviously not awesome. And I also think that the college conferences are not really college conferences anymore. They're corporate entities. They're money-making machines, and that's where we are.
That's fine. And even if you felt like it was absolutely imperative for the ACC to act, they still went out and added 3 schools that nobody else wanted. I mean, either of the other conferences could have taken Cal and Stanford when they were picking over the bones of the Pac-12,
Right.
and nobody wanted them.
I agree
right?
with you.
Like they're literally, this is a buy one get two free deal at Food Lion for irrelevant football programs. It's just you're shopping at TJ Maxx and trying to tell us we're eating dinner at Morton's. It's a complete load of it.
I would never eat at TJ Maxx. No offense to the folks at TJ Maxx, I would never eat there. Would it be different if it were Memphis and Tulane versus Cal and Stanford?
It's a really good question, and I would say would I feel differently if it was Navy and Tulane? And the answer is probably. But think about it. If college football is all that matters, adding Navy buys you half of a better college football property than anything the ACC has right now. Army Navy moves units. It is a huge deal. And you could have bought yourself half of that. No, I mean, I think that's a great example. Your question is exactly a great example of why it would make sense to wait. You're acting now because these schools are sitting on the bargain basement table at 80% off, 90% off. If you use the leverage that you have over the next 5 to 6 years, you can make the smart decision and add schools that actually help you. Navy helps you because they bring the Army-Navy game. Tulane might help you. I don't think Memphis, but you also might be in a situation in 5 years where the Big 12 schools are looking to get out, and then you have your pick of them. There's a million options that you foreclose yourself out from by doing this, taking this it's the ACC's best bad idea, and acting now from a position of weakness hurts you a lot more than waiting and acting from a position of strength would.
Something that you, as an Everton supporter, will understand. I think we're headed for a college football world that includes promotion and relegation. By the way, Cal and Stanford are both top 20 institutions, according to U.S. News and World Report. Stanford is fourth. Cal is Cal. I know
honestly,
nobody cares.
Adam, you can't sit here and tell me we're going to have a football super league and then read
No.
USA Today rankings to me. It's irrelevant. It's like what the temperature is.
It's the weather. By the way,
presidents want to hobnob
with
their highfalutin peers.
The weather in San Francisco is fantastic. All right, look. It is what it is at this point. Luke DeCock
that's true.
of the News and Observer, man. I'll talk to you later.
All right, I'm gonna go see what Jim Phillips says. You may owe me $1.
I'll write you a check.
I'm not sure that'll clear. I'll take
it might for $1. I can cover $1.
All right, see you later.
Take care, Luke DeCock.